All right, how are you doing? You showed up on a day like this to go to church. God bless you. Thank you for being here. My name is Garrett. I'm one of the pastors here, and that's the last time I'm going to say those words from this stage. Today is my last Sunday preaching for you guys. I'll be here next week. I don't have like a big, thing at the end of it, like a big whatever. But I love you guys, and if you're new, that's what's weird about this place. If I get emotional for no reason. So, we are continuing our series called Needy People, and the little turn of phrase that we're doing with this series is we're not doing a series on how to deal with like needy people, like extra grace required type people, but we're trying to learn that we are needy people, right? That's the you and I are the people that are in deep need. We're born with needs. We live our lives with needs, and some of them are needs that you're sometimes too prideful or you don't want to admit that you have. Like that's some of the needs that we have, right? And some needs are not like that. You don't want to admit that I don't have those. But there's things that take some extra work and you don't want to do them. There are things you need and you're just like, I don't want to do that. It's a lot of work, right? And so what we've been doing throughout this series is we started with the greatest need any human ever has, and that's the need for God. You need the love of God. That's what you need, right? And as Christians, we believe that you have Jesus or you don't have anything at all. That's the word. That's the yes or no answer He's put us in, right? That you either take Him or you don't. Like that's what Jesus offers, and so you need the love of God. And then we said last week that you need the love of others. This is something that we as a culture can get on board with. We actually are on. We're grasping onto this as a culture here in the whatever year this is, 2023. We understand this, right? We're like, you got to accept all people. You got to find your true self. You got to let people. You got to be you, and people got to be okay with you being you. That whole thing. Now, these are not all the same sentence. They're not all the same meaning. They're not all exactly right about everything. But they do agree with the fact that we need love from other people. We need that. This whole you're not an island thing. That's true. And today's need that we're talking about is that you need to love others. You're not just born with a need to receive love from others. You're born with a need to love others. That God did not actually make you to just bring things in. He did not just make you as someone who takes in, but also people who push out, right? We take in, but we also hand out. We also push out into the world. And one of the things that is not supposed to just be there for you to consume is the love of others and the gratitude of others, but also it's actually good for you. It's good for me to have that experience of actively loving other people. This is why becoming a parent is such a shaping moment in your life. You're holding this child and you go, oh, I now see how much is on the line here. This is why you change your mind instantly about all sorts of things. You go, oh, if I don't love this child, things are going to go wrong here. I was not made just to have this child so I can feel good because now I'm a dad and I always wanted to be a dad. No, I need to love this child. Otherwise, things are going to go desperately, desperately wrong. You and I were not created just to take things in, but also to hand them out. And the passage that we're looking at today is a story where Jesus, He wants to drive this home in a way that He's at the last meal He's had with His disciples, and He's looking at His disciples, He's going, what in these last few moments that I had do I really need to nail down with these people? And one of those things is that He needs to let His disciples know that you need to be someone who loves others. I want you to serve others. I want you to love other people. You need to do this. And so, if you have your Bibles, open up to John chapter 13, and we're going to read the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. John chapter 13, it says this it was just before the Passover festival, which is one of the main holidays of the Jewish religion, one of the peaks of the year, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for Him to leave this world and go to the Father. So it's a great holiday. It's a big festival, whole thing. And Jesus, the whole thing's wrapped up in His mind is, I'm about to die. It's time for me to go. And having loved His own who were in the world, He loved them to the end. And the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas to to go, the son of Simon Iscariot, to go betray Jesus. And Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. And so he got up from the meal, and he took off his outer clothing, he wrapped a towel around his waist, and after that he poured water in a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' feet. And he dried them with a towel that's wrapped around him. And he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You do not realize what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "Unless I wash your feet, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter said, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus answered, "Those who've had a bath already only need their feet washed. Your whole body's clean, but not all of you are clean." And he knew that who was going to betray him. That's why he said not everyone was clean. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and he returned to his place. That's fascinating. He put on his clothes. All right. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. Now, I am your Lord and teacher, and I have washed your feet, and you should wash one another's feet. I have set an example for you that you should, I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." All right, so here's how we're going to look at this passage today. So, what's happening here? What is Jesus doing? He's answering a question. He's giving an answer to a question that's sort of being assumed in the room. It's being tossed around the room, and he's got to go, "I got to answer this because they're missing a point here." So the way we're going to look at this passage, we're going to look at what is the answer Jesus is giving his disciples, and then we're going to look at the clues that give us what the actual question is, because that's an important thing. And then we're going to look at this really interesting part at the end where we see that we must allow Jesus to serve us. It's a weird part of the passage, but it's interesting that Jesus says, "No, I need to serve you." So the answer, the question, and Jesus must serve us. So what is the answer? What is it that Jesus is wanting his disciples to know? He says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. He said, "Do you understand what I've done for you? I have set an example that you should do as I have done. You should serve others. And now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Now, what he wants is them to serve one another. That's what he wants. And this idea of one another pops up all over the New Testament, especially in the epistles. The epistles were these letters that the apostles wrote to different churches around the Roman world, and he wrote them these letters, and they would teach them how to be Christians. They would teach them how to live for God. And one thing that shows up all the time is that they wanted them to love one another. This idea of one another. Here's what I want you to do with each other. And you'd find them say things like greet one another and bear with one another, encourage one another, be kind and compassionate to one another, show hospitality to one another. This is showing up all the time, and people have even called it the one anothering of the Bible, right? This is how the community should look. And Jesus is leading the way with it. He's saying, I want you to be people who serve each other. When we talk about loving other people, we're talking about serving them. We want you to serve. And this is weird because, you might be asking yourself, well, why does this Christian faith, why does the religion care so much about this one another type stuff? Isn't religion kind of like a me and God thing? Like, isn't that what's important? It's like, I'm here and God's up there and it's personal to me. And the answer is kind of, yes, it is between you and God, but the you and God part affects the you and other people part. Like that song we just sang, we're living in the overflow. That's a very good song for us to sing today. Right? What we're saying is that as we are interacting with God, as we are living and following God, He is changing our lives to where that spills out into the rest of our life. And Jesus says, I've served you, and I want that to spill out into the rest of your life to where you serve one another. I've loved you. I want that to spill out to where you are loving one another. The inner part of our lives, the inner part of our faith, changes the outer part of our faith. Here's what the Apostle Paul wrote in the book of Galatians. The Galatians is one of those letters that the pastors wrote to churches. And the whole point of the Galatians is that you are free. In Christ, you are free. You don't have to work for your salvation. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to have the sacrifices. That's all been done for you. Jesus has accomplished all that. You are free. And so, but this is what he says about that freedom. He says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh, but rather serve one another humbly in love. Right? That freedom that God has given us, that grace that God has given us, is not a moment where we just go, this is so great, I'm going to just take it in and take it in. It's me. It doesn't matter what I've done. It doesn't matter what I'm doing now. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to take in all that love. I'm going to take in all that freedom where I can do whatever I want. No, he's saying this inner freedom does not result in an outer free-for-all. He says, listen, I want that freedom to be something that you use as a reason to go serve other people. As a reason and a timing and an example to go love other people. Use your freedom in Christ as an opportunity to serve and to love others. The inner affects the outer. And our lives change more as we follow Jesus more and more, because that time with God, the me and God thing, spills out into the rest of my life. And Jesus says, I'm your teacher and I'm your Lord, and you've all agreed to this. You've all left your professions. He's talking to his disciples right now. He's going, you've agreed that I'm your teacher. You've been following me for 3 years. You've even gotten to the point where you agree that I'm the Lord. I'm the Messiah. I'm the one who saved the world. You've agreed to all that. Well, now listen to what that person has to say. I'm willing to serve people. I want you to be willing to serve people. And then he says this amazing thing right at the end. He says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. He's not, it is a blessing to the rest of the world, but he's not saying, I want you to go be a blessing to the rest of the world, even though he does want that. He wants you to understand what it's like to follow God. And he's saying, when you do this, it's not just a blessing to the rest of the world. You yourself will be blessed if you do them. You will be blessed. And you have experienced this. I know you have. I've been a part of this church for several years now. And we have had many moments where I've been the recipient of the grace from others, and you've been the recipient of the grace from others, and where we've had this group, we go, oh, this person needs help moving their house in, or this person over here needs help pulling this off, or we got to do our big serve stuff. We have to do all those sort of things. And we all gather together, and we go serve together. And at the end of the day, we're not going, oh, man, I killed it. We go, oh, man, that was awesome. That's what we should be doing more often. That felt like I was just hitting the target, not because I was doing a great job, but because it was a blessing to me to be a part of it. We see this all the time. The problem is we forget about it. We start thinking about ourselves again. And we forget that Jesus is always right when he says, if you do these things, you will be blessed. So that's the answer. And obviously, is anyone surprised? You kind of expected the preacher to say that. Serve people, right? But here's what's interesting. The question that was going around the room that Jesus is answering. You see, Jesus is at the Last Supper. It's what we now call the Last Supper. They just thought it was a supper with Jesus, and even though Jesus said, I'm about to die, I'm about to get handed over, the whole thing, they're like, yeah, we're going to be with Jesus forever, I guess. So they didn't know, they didn't understand the magnitude of the moment for some reason, but Jesus kept telling them, this is a big deal, it's a big day, I'm about to, it's all coming to an end right now. And Jesus is having this Passover meal, this Last Supper with his disciples, and Luke chapter 22 tells us what's going on. Just as the point where Jesus does the whole, this is my body broken for you thing where we get communion from. This is my blood poured out for many. This whole thing, this is the cup of the new covenant. It's a whole new things going on. And that's what's happening here. And that Jesus washes the feet and all these sorts of things. This is the kind of moment that's going on here. And Luke chapter 22 says, a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was to be considered the greatest. what is wrong with these people? Do they have no idea of what read the room means? What is who? I don't know. I think I wrote this next section when I was hungry, so just bear with me. But listen, these guys are walking around going, "Hey, dude, you know what? I think I'm greater than all of you people." And that's the word they use. Who's the greatest? They didn't even ask a more humble version. They didn't go, "Who's the best in here?" That's and those are two different words, best and greatest, because no one cares who the boat is. No one's going, "Who's the best of all time?" We all want to know who the goat is, all right? Who's the greatest of all time? And they're going, "I think I might be him." You know what I mean? And they're sitting at a table with Jesus Christ, who's just saying, "My whole body's broken" thing. He just gets done with this, and they're like, "I think I'm one of 12 here." That's... And Jesus hears this debate. And he goes, "I'm 50 days away from handing over the Holy Spirit to these guys. I'm about 2 months away from letting these people start this thing called the church. I'm about to die and go away, and they've been with me for 3 years, and they're missing the point still. The first major sermon I preached was all about what my kingdom looks like. And they still don't get it. That it is an upside-down kingdom. It is different than what the world says. That when they actually ask the question, who's the greatest, they don't even know how to answer it when they're in the presence of Jesus. Because they're going through this meal, and there's been a giant omission the entire time. And it was the disciples who set up the meal. No one has had their feet washed yet. Now, that's not a thing for us. We don't really care about that, right? But in their culture, that was a big deal. And that was a really important thing, and someone had to do it. It's always the lowest servant in the room. As Americans, we can go, "Well, let's just put a bowl out there, people dip their feet in. It's fine." But we're Americans. That's our culture, okay? But for them, it's a big deal. And no one had covered it. And they're all in the room sitting there going, "Well, I'm not going to do it." And he over there said, "I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be the one that ends up washing everybody's feet in this room. I'm not going to sit here and earn the right of being the 12th place out of 12 people." And Jesus is listening to this debate about who's the greatest. And here's what the book of John tells us Jesus knew about himself. We just read it. This is what he knew about himself when he's listening to these people talk. He knew that the Father had put all things under his power. He knew that he had come from the Father and that he was about to return to the Father. He knew he was about to die on the cross and save the world from the sins. He knew he was going to go to battle against death itself and win the fight. And they're going, "Which one of us is the greatest?" And he takes off his robe, wraps a towel around his waist, and he washes the feet of the disciples. The greatest man in the history of the world looks at this job like washing people's feet, and he says, "That's a job suitable for me. It's not too low for me to do." And this is the lie that our world teaches us, and the disciples are falling for it every step of the way. The world tells you there's a laundry list of things that you cannot be caught dead doing. You always got to get that final word back in there. You can't do that because people will look at you like you're a doormat. You can't do that because it'll look like you can't command a room. You can't do that because it'll look like you don't have confidence, or you're not an alpha, or you don't have your world put together, or whatever. All these sorts of things that you can't do that because you'll stick to you forever. People will never forget. You'll never live it down. And Jesus looks at that and goes, "That's something that's suitable for me. I would gladly do that." These people are all in a room where they're all going, I don't know who's going to wash people's feet, but it's certainly not going to be me. And Jesus is going, "You guys could have been sitting here going, let's all wash each other's feet. Why don't we have a little circle of friendship where no one's the servant? We're all servant to each other. What if we did that?" And they missed it. They missed it. And Jesus tries to tell them over and over and over again. He says, "Listen, if you want to be the greatest in my kingdom, you have to be the least. If you want to be the leader of all, you got to be the servant of all. In my kingdom, it is the poor in spirit who are blessed. If you want to come into my kingdom, you got to come in like a child, not like a king or a scholar or something. You have to be like a child. You have to understand, you're not seeing the world the way it is. And what's fascinating about this statement, this story, is Jesus actually never lives this down. He never got to the point where people were like, they forgot about the fact that he washed his disciples' feet. In fact, we're still talking about it today. About how awesome it is that Jesus would be willing to wash people's feet. It actually wasn't something to live down. It was something that he was blessed for doing. Just like he said. There's a story that I heard about a Christian teacher named Dallas Willard. He's also a philosophy professor at USC. And one day his kid starts, railing on about his being a Christian and how you can't be so stupid to think God exists and blah, blah, whatever he was talking about. He was just going after this professor. And he's a longtime philosophy professor. This guy's been in college since, until, Thanksgiving, But he knows everything because he's a freshman who made it all the way to Thanksgiving. Anyway, so he's, doing the whole thing. And the kid gets done, and the whole class is like, all right, this is going to be fun. Let's hear what Professor Willard has to say. And he said, I think that's a great place to leave it for the day. I'll see you guys on Thursday. And everybody goes, okay. And that story just sort of stuck around. And at one point he's at a conference, and a guy said, hey, I heard this story about you. Like, what's going on there? And he goes, well, I had been working on not always having to have the final word. So I thought I'd let him have the final word. And that story will go on way longer than whatever he would have said if he would been like, I'm going to just pummel this kid to the ground. Right? We misunderstand the world. When Jesus starts talking about serving people, we start going, I can't let the world take advantage of me. Jesus going, you're missing out on blessings. You're missing out on blessings. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Speaking of the upside down world that Jesus is bringing us into, he says this, in Luke, we go back to Luke, he says this about authority and leadership. He says, the kings of the Gentiles, they lord it over them. Like this worldly leadership that you're familiar with is where the leader pushes people around. Says, it's my money, if you're going to do this. It's my call, we're going to do this. I'm in charge, I'm going to do this, and I. And they just lord it over people. And then once they get done pushing people around, this is what he says, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. Don't you see all I'm doing for you? Don't you see how I'm sacrificing for everybody else? Oh, no one cares how much I'm giving for them. And Jesus going, this is not the way it's going to be for you. That's how the world does it. But you, the greatest among you, should be like the youngest. The one who rules should be like the one who serves. When Jesus gave them the answer, I want you to be people who serve one another, the question that was in the air is, what does it look like to be great? What does it look like to be doing really well in life? And Jesus says, serving. Serving is what it looks like to be killing it. And he goes, now that you know this, I've been telling you this for 3 years, but now that you know this, hear me. You will be blessed if you do them. Now, here's the final point. It's a weird one. The final point is that Jesus must serve you. In Christianity, we don't get to just get off the bus and go, okay, I'll serve them when I can. I'm going to serve here. I'll be kind to people, or I'll give to charity. I'll do these things to where I've shown myself to be good enough, right? No, he goes, it goes deeper than that. You also have to let Jesus serve you, which is a really weird aspect of our faith. So there's this weird scene right in the middle, because Peter always throws a wrench in every plan. He comes to Peter, Jesus washing everyone's feet. He comes to Peter and he says, Lord, you're going to wash my feet? No. I could never. I'm way too humble to let someone like you wash someone like my feet. And let's just remember, Peter was just hip deep in a conversation about who's the greatest. Let's not sit here and pretend like if that debate's going around, he's sitting it out, okay? He's right in the middle of it. And then all of a sudden, he's going to be Captain Humble over here. And you're like, he's not being humble. He's trying to get one over his friends for having the gall to let Jesus wash their feet. And then Jesus said, they have this a longer conversation. That the second half, I don't really understand what's going on. But I will tell you, we'll stop right here. Then Jesus says this to him. He says, if you do not let me wash you, you have no part with me. Jesus says, if you don't let me serve you, you have no part with me. And this is a really weird part of our faith, but it's a foundational part of the gospel. Think about what it means to become a Christian. Think about what it means to give your life to Christ. It means you're going to the creator of the world, the greatest person that's ever lived, the person who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything inside them. And you're going, hey, I want you to die for me. Will you please take my sin and put it on your record? Will you please take my punishment so I don't have to be punished? This is one of the most absurd questions you could ever hear on the face of the earth. And Jesus says, but if you don't let me do that, you have no part in me. Because like we already said, talked about the first week, you either have Jesus or you have nothing at all. And we like to convince ourselves that we can just pick and choose different parts of what Jesus offered and say, oh yeah, I like the part where we serve the hungry. I like the part where we take medicine to the other parts of the world. And secular people really do like this. If you're non-Christian, that you probably go, I do like this part of Christianity, where you took medicine and took it to Africa, or you put orphanages around the world. You do these sorts of things to help people who are needy. I like that. I just don't understand why you always have to bring Jesus with you. Why can't you just leave him at home and just do the other parts? And you can go, I guess theoretically you could do that. It's just historically it's never gone that way. The two have always gone together. The me and Jesus part has always led to the me and you part. Where you can't, not only are you not allowed to with Jesus pick and choose parts, it doesn't work to pick and choose parts. There's no power to pick and choose and say, I'll take this part, but not this part. I'll follow Jesus' ethics because I think they're pretty good, but I'm not going to sit here and let him take my sins. That's kind of gross. You have to take both. You have to sit there and accept, I need the washing of Jesus Christ. I need the forgiving of Jesus Christ. And if you can't do that, Jesus goes, you have no part with me. I'm not going to give you an E for effort. You have no part with me. You know, in the internet you'll find a lot of these things that for years they were called deconversion stories, but now they now call them deconstruction stories, where these celebrity Christians, although they don't have to be celebrity, but a lot of you read the ones that are from celebrity Christians, where they talk about how they no longer believe in Christ. They're no longer Christian. And you know, and they'll put their whole posts out there and they'll say all the different things of this is why I don't believe and this is why I could no longer do it because whatever. And then but almost inevitably, they always get to the end. They go, but even though I'm leaving and even though this is the last time I'm going to talk to you as a spiritual person or whatever, I still think you should love people. I still think you should serve the poor and do this and do that and forgive and all that sort of stuff. And what they're saying is, I don't believe in Jesus, but I still think you should do all the things that Jesus taught us to do. As if we would have ever thought to do them if Jesus didn't teach them to us. You can't pick and choose. You got to choose Jesus or not choose Jesus. And he says, if you're gonna sit here and say, I don't need Jesus to save me, I don't need Jesus to wash me, I don't need Jesus to come be the person who forgives me, then he goes, then you have no part with me. But if you do, and you are going to follow me, then I want you to be people who love one another. I want you to be people who serve one another. I want you to be people who let this God and you part change the you and other people part, to where it spills down to the rest of the world. And I want to tell you something. This is something I've felt as a part of this church. I've felt the blessings of being a part of the people who serve, and I've felt the blessing of being the person who's served by the rest of you. I've felt it for the last several years, and I love you for it. But we have to keep moving forward in that direction. We have to keep following Jesus. Keep serving. Keep loving. There's people wandering in here every single week. And God's going, this is where you can find life. But if we're going to take any part of Jesus, we've got to take them all. But if we do these things, we will be blessed. Because the way Jesus sees the world is not upside down. He sees it for how it really is. We're the ones that have an upside down view of the world, who put the wrong things to the top. And it's time we just go out and admit, yes, Jesus, you're right. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. I want to see it happen 1,000 times more. If we do these things, we will be blessed by doing them. God love you. God bless you guys. I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray for you guys as a church real quick. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this message. Thank you for your son who's willing to serve arrogant, self-righteous, and sinful, and legalistic, and just people. You're just willing to serve us all. And I pray that be a message that just permeates this church. I pray that you will bless Lake Springs Church. Still a young church, but it's a church that's loved me and my family well, has been gracious to me and my family. I want to pray that you be gracious to it. That you continue to put your hand on its steering wheel and just continue to guide it. Make it a church that honors you and worships you and is changed by you and is filled by you and is empowered by you. That people can come into this church every Sunday and find your love and your grace and your salvation. Keep this church, keep them free from the temptations of the world. Keep them in love with you. I pray that you bless everyone as we try to follow you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Every week, what we do here at church is you have a time of reflection, but also a time of communion, where we take the bread and we take the juice and we remember the sacrifice that Jesus gave us. And we do this every week because it's the bottom of it all, right? What Jesus has done for us is the bottom of it all, and it's what we have to keep in the forefront of our minds. That as we move throughout the different needs that we have as people, we always remember the very first one, which is, I need the love of God. And the communion is proof that you have the love of God because he was willing to die for you and to die for me. And so as the next song goes, we have communion up front or in the back. And you can take it whenever you're ready. And if you need some prayer, we have elders that's kind of scattered around the room. Derek and I will be somewhere, and we'd love to pray for you if you have anything need to be prayed over. But yeah, in this last song, let's just spend some time focusing on the love that we have received from Jesus Christ. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for your Son and his grace and his sacrifice. I pray that we'll never forget it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.